Hi, welcome to our broadcast today. This is Facebook Friday for the Barefoot Consultants, and we're here every Friday talking about things related to baby boomers and freelancing. And really, now it's more with the pandemic, it's more the 50 plus crowd. A lot of people are reconsidering the idea of being employed, of going back to work in an office, that kind of thing. Uh, some of what's going on in the minds of people is that if I could work from home for a year, why couldn't I work from home all the time, or at least part of the time? And that's a good question. And that's a question that has some companies scratching their head trying to come up with the answer. And it also has some companies are taking a pretty strong stance about making sure people come back in. So a little bit of a battle going on there. And what we're seeing now, too, is lots of people going back to work are doing it for a week or two or three or a month or whatever. And they're saying, I don't want to do this anymore. And they're looking at ways to freelance on their own from home as things go forward. And it's a very good solution for many baby boomers that have great skills, who know certain domains of knowledge. They come out of an industry or a discipline or a skill set or something like that. And that is in demand. Every company on the planet, basically, and every nonprofit organization and every government organization is really putting Humpty Dumpty back together again now since the pandemic. And so that's created lots of new freelancing opportunities for people to contribute there. So we'd like to welcome our listeners from around the world. Most of our listeners come in on the recording, and we'd love to have you here. And we're happy to answer all questions. And I see John has checked in. That's great. Welcome. Glad to have you here. And if you have any questions, you can drop those in the chat window. If you want to let us know where you're checking in from, that's always fun to know. I think that the last count we had members in 104 countries. So we get a lot of interesting people checking in from around the world from time to time, and always enjoy that. And we get people checking in from places like Iowa, and that's fun too. Because a lot of us are not where we thought we were going to be at this time. If you roll the machine back to a little bit more than a year ago, a year and a few months, I'd been living in Mexico for most of the last 15 years and was in Dallas on a business trip, and all of a sudden got surprised by the pandemic. Thought I would be here for a couple of weeks, and I've been here since March 13th of last year, or 12th, or whatever it was. And so, boy, things change. But the good news is that the world of freelancing and the world of working virtual has emerged much more prominently onto the world stage than it ever would have. And, that's a good thing in some respects, because it's opening up new opportunities for baby boomers to share their considerable talent from home or wherever they want to work from, whether it's a beach somewhere or an office in their home or a workspace or whatever it might be. And we're all looking forward to the rules and regulations easing a bit as we come out of the pandemic. There's always going to be a little something going on, but fortunately the news as of today on July 9th is that the seriousness of the cases that are coming along much less serious due to the vaccine in most cases. And so that's a good thing. But we don't get too deep into those topics. There's lots of other places you can go on the web and get people that know a whole lot more about that than I do. But I just noticed anecdotally as I talk to people that people are making plans. They're figuring out how to get back home or wherever home is, or figuring out how to make that first trip after pandemic, and that's exciting. And some of them are going to be taking that with them. So we're very excited about that. And it's good to see David checking in, and those of you that are also checking in on the line, if you hit the like button, we love that. That helps us share this message to other people, and helps feed the Google, or not the Google, the Facebook algorithm, and helps other people see it. And so we're pretty excited when that happens, and looking forward to answering questions from those of you that are watching this on the replay. So today we're going to talk about a couple things, but one of the most important ones is this whole idea of building confidence as you begin to work on these networks. And there's a few simple things that you can do that give you reassurance as you're beginning to do this, and help build your confidence in doing this. A lot of baby boomers that I work with say, what can I possibly do online? Am I too old to compete? My computer skills aren't great, that kind of thing. And while all those things may have a germ of truth in them, there are many, many good ways to overcome those. And we now have millions of baby boomers freelancing, to sort of proving the point that this is something that is a good fit for baby boomers. And particularly along with the pandemic, you don't have to go into an office. You can do it from home and tap into skills you already have. You don't have to have a commute. You don't have to have a special wardrobe. You don't have to have an extra car maybe to get back and forth to work. I talked to somebody recently who it looks like the way they're going to continue in their current employment, but they only have to go into work one day a week. And so in their case, they were thinking about getting rid of their extra car, because basically it's a couple that has one car to support the commute back and forth to work every day. And if you look at the cost of that car and you compare it to what it would cost to take an Uber one day a week, an Uber one day a week is a lot less, and you don't have all the extra baggage that goes along with having a car, maybe in some cases car payments, and certainly insurance payments, additional insurance and gas and all that kind of stuff, and parking when you get there. I remember the last corporate office I worked in, we had parking included if you were an employee of that building, but somebody coming to see you in Los Angeles, I think they paid something close to $22 an hour, something like that, to park there. Just incredible. So not much fun. But let's get down to the things that help build your confidence. And a lot of this stuff has to do with preparation, being prepared for working online. And the first step of being prepared of working online is building a profile. And a profile is a little like a resume, but it's very different than a resume. It's a written document, if you will, on these online networks that helps potential buyers understand what your skills are, what your background is, what your experience is, what we call your domains of knowledge, what those are. And that would be a very important first place to start to build your confidence, because most people working on online networks and people that want to buy your services will look at that first. If they're out looking for people with a certain skill set, a certain background, a certain certification or something like that, they're going to find you and they're going to read about you. And you want to make sure your profile is up to snuff, because if it's not, and one of the big complaints I hear from freelance buyers is that there wasn't really enough in the person's profile for me to really get a handle on what kind of experience this person had. And one person I talked to, one buyer in particular, said, I can see that this person has 30 years experience in the same industry that I am. So they probably know a lot, but they've got to give me a little bit more detail so I get an idea of the kind of skills they have and the kind of work they've done and that sort of thing. And so building your profile is the most important thing to do as a first step. And so that's number one. There's a little bit of a chicken and egg thing going on here. Is that the number two thing is understand what your keywords and keyword phrases are. This is very important. A lot of new freelancers misunderstand this concept. They think that when a buyer hires a proofreader, for example, they want to get the best proofreader on the planet, or the best one they can afford. And that's not really true. They want to get a good proofreader that has some knowledge about the topic that they want proofread. So if somebody has a site for trading baseball cards and they put articles up there every week, they want a proofreader that knows a little something about baseball cards and will recognize names and dates potentially and that kind of thing. Or if it's a site that does talks about organic gardening, or a YouTube channel, and they want to have scripts proofread, they want somebody proofreading those scripts that knows something about organic gardening. It's very a simple concept once you understand it, but it's one that confounds many. I see many profiles of people that do things like proofreading or writing articles, and they basically take the approach of any topic, anytime, anywhere. And that's not what freelance buyers are looking for. They're looking for somebody that has specific knowledge. And this is where baby boomers have a tremendous advantage of having that specific knowledge from a few decades of working in that industry or in that field or in that job position. I've talked to several people that have over the years that have worked in a marketing position in many different industries, but still in that same marketing position generally. So the idea of knowing how to launch products and services, and knowing how to get promotional efforts underway for PR, maybe PR for the company or the nonprofit or whatever it might be. So they've done all that before. They've done it across many industries. So their domain of knowledge has to do with marketing processes, where somebody else's domain of knowledge might be that they worked in the pharmaceutical industry and they know a lot about pharmaceuticals, and they've, sort of been in the industry and reading first magazines and then websites every day that talk about what drugs are popular, which ones are having problems, and all that kind of stuff. So they followed that whole chain of history, which, even though their job may not have been specifically involved in research into drugs or that kind of thing, they might have worked in the accounting department, but they still absorbed a lot of this information that had to do with all things pharmaceutical as they live through that, and maybe as they work for 2 or 3 different pharmaceutical companies or that kind of thing. So that's how people accumulate knowledge. And so this is the idea of understanding those key words. What are the words that make you unique in terms of your ability to work for a client? And we see clients from all walks of life. I know I worked with a freelancer that did work for a shipbuilder in Europe recently. We've had several people that have gotten involved in writing materials for companies in Eastern Europe that sell minerals, these big bulk mineral freighters, or I don't know what I guess they're called bulk carriers. They're ships that go around the world and take things like calcium and all kinds of different minerals around the world that are used typically in manufacturing processes and that kind of thing. And so when you have a knowledge of that, a little bit of a working knowledge, you can really do a great job for somebody in proofreading it, because oftentimes the company you're working for, the organization, is outside of the English speaking world. And this is where some of the greatest opportunities are today in the world, is in the English speaking world, because as a commerce entity, that's where the action is. That's where the most money is flowing through. Not to say there aren't opportunities in other areas. There's aspects of these online websites that focus exclusively on companies that want things done in German, and others in French, and others in Spanish, and that kind of thing. But a lot of the commerce today that we see, it is in the English speaking world. And so people want to do things well in English so they can sell their products and services to the English speaking world. And this is one of the real advantages that anybody living in the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, UK, Ireland has a tremendous advantage in terms of being a freelancer, because far many more people want to get to English language markets than want to get into other markets. And especially now that we've gone through the pandemic, everybody's rethinking their business model. Everybody's rethinking their supply chains. It's nice when you can alter your supply chain and get something that's closer, but in a lot of cases you can't when you're looking for certain raw materials and that kind of thing, or even assembly of electronic components. There's still a lot of that kind of thing will be outsourced and come through a supply chain. So a lot of research in that area. This is one of the things that we see a lot of jobs for engineers, helping companies alter their supply chains in order, locating new sources of supply, new methods of delivery, all that kind of thing, because the supply chains have been disrupted. And the next thing really to build your confidence, and really this is the most important probably, if you've got a profile and you know your keywords, you want to start off working on very simple jobs that would take you no more than 1 to 2 hours to do, and jobs that would be the kind of thing you could almost do in your sleep. You don't want to run in there and tackle a $3,000 job, as one of our folks did recently, and they won the job, but they barely knew how to navigate within the Upwork system. They barely knew how to find the client in the chat area and all that kind of stuff. So one of the reasons it's so important to do these smaller jobs is they're much simpler to figure out. You're learning how to work in a new system, and we suggest doing half a dozen to a dozen 1 to 2 hour jobs just to get a feel for what the system is like, what it's like to navigate, what it's like to work virtually within one of these systems, how the transactions go through, how the money gets to your bank account, all those kind of things. Is that after you do a half a dozen to a dozen jobs, you will know and be comfortable with. And it's not important at all that you make your maximum income. When you do those first jobs, you are absolutely not worried about the money that you make, as much as you want to make sure you're going to get a 4 or 5-star rating on that job. And this is the most important thing to feed into the algorithm that the site that you're working on wants to figure out is, are you able to satisfy a client? Because it's a different question. As a freelancer, you won't make much money if you just know how to do the job, because doing just the job that's described oftentimes does not make for a satisfied client, because they didn't put the right job description out there, or they left a key fact out of the job description or key parameter. And this is, your chance to ask a few questions, exchange some information back and forth. If you're writing an article, it's always good to start with an outline. And then once the person that's buying your services looks at that, they can reflect on that and say, I'd like to add this, or let's take this out. Or they might say, yeah, that's perfect. That looks good for me. But they're buying into the process. That's a very important thing to understand about freelancing. This is not, somebody sets the shoes out on the doorstep at night, and they come back the next morning and the cobbler has cleaned them up and shined them up and put new soles on them and that kind of thing. And too many freelancers think of freelancing in that kind of mindset. It's much more interactive and much more collaborative. And that kind of approach really satisfies your client. And the good news is, if you're doing a simple job that's 1 to 2 hours, there's not a lot of stuff to talk about in terms of how to do it. It's fairly short and compact. Whereas if you're doing a job that's a $3,000 job, there's a lot more complexity to that kind of job and a lot more nuance to that kind of job that the buyer would be looking for. So be sure and ask yourself, is this something I could do in my sleep almost? Is this something simple? Is this something that I can get a 4 to 5 star rating for? And just kind of as a bonus tip, a lot of people that get started on freelancing get really concerned about their rating. They want to maintain a perfect score. They want to get 5, 5, 5 all the time. And a lot of people, as they start in freelancing, are able to do that. There are most freelance buyers generally look at a freelancing experience and how they're going to rate it from the standpoint of did the job get done to my satisfaction? Is this generally what I want? Yes. Did the job get generally done on time? You may have had a delay along the way for one reason or another, but as long as you communicate that kind of thing and let the buyer know that it's going to be a few days later, whatever's going on, or they let you know, yes, they're going to be a human being about it. Every once in a while, you get the more hypercritical people that will say, well, they were a 3.8 or 4.2 or whatever it is. But anything between a 4 and a 5 is great. And as Christopher says, hi, Christopher, good to see you, that perfect scores are not believable. And the interesting thing about scores on Upwork, because there's so many transactions going through that system every day, and also through systems like Freelancer and all the others, that presumably that's all done mathematically. They would be foolish if they weren't. But like Christopher says, people don't believe a perfect score. And if somebody's got done 100 jobs and got a perfect score, you wonder if somehow the fix wasn't in. It's somebody's not going to give you a perfect score on all of 100 jobs. When I have interviewed people at these networks, they say that anybody with a score that's between 4.0 and 5.0 is considered an excellent potential resource for any kind of job. So very good point that the perfect scores aren't believable, even though they might be mathematically correct. You don't want to set this false expectation of perfection, because there's a lot of people making a lot of money on these networks after they get the occasional bad review or something under 4. And it's just, jobs are like taxi cabs in New York. There's just another one coming along. You just wait a few minutes and there'll be another one there ready to pick you up. And so I know from talking to really thousands of new freelancers over the 15 years that we've been doing this and the 20 years that I've been working on these networks, that people place too much emphasis on that perfection aspect of this. And once you're in the system, you realize that it's not a big deal. And once you get a number of jobs under your belt, it's harder for one bad rating on a job to affect the overall average of what you're doing. So that gives you a measure of protection against that kind of thing. So very much encourage you uh, to dive in. You want to always be respectful. You always want to be interactive with the client so that their feedback is going into the job as it's progressing. And you always want to go that extra mile because if you're doing a 1 hour job, that extra mile is typically 10 or 15 minutes at the most just to fix something, to change something, that kind of thing, rather than on a $3,000 job, that might be an extra 20 hours or something like that. So something to think about as you do that. And Christopher makes that point. Yes, an occasional unhappy client is bound to happen once in a while. Just the law of averages. Hello, we can't please all the people all the time. And if you do please all the people all the time, you're probably a nervous wreck because it's just impossible. And this is a theme in freelancing is you want to work for the people who get you as an individual and as somebody who has skills and experience and domains of knowledge to offer to them. And of course, nobody that has ever worked for them in the past has ever been perfect. And so just know that's the environment that we're all in. They're not expecting perfect. There's some of the buyers tell me, if I can just get people to complete the job, I'm happy, because if it's sort of complete, I can take it from there. But there's so many freelancers out there that don't get that, and sort of jump into it and get upset about that kind of thing. And let's see. Yeah. I wish it was all this easy. You need to retire from freelancing and start collecting coconuts. That is, in fact, in Huatulco, where I spend a part of the year, that is a very good occupation. There's lots of coconuts consumed in Huatulco in very many ways. Coconut water, coconut pastries, coconut flour. It's amazing, and looking forward to getting back to that soon. So if anybody has any questions about this whole confidence issue, I'm happy to answer those. And if you'd like to help us share this message with other baby boomers, hit that like button, and that will help the Facebook algorithm share that with other people out there. That's always a good thing to do. Helps other people see this information, helps other people, other baby boomers, other people that are 50 plus years old realize that they can take care of themselves and support themselves without benefit of a large corporation or a large nonprofit or government agency taking care of them, that they can take control of their future lives. And this is one of the great things about freelancing. In the surveys, what comes back number one is flexibility over time. You control how your day unfolds. Doesn't mean you don't sometimes have appointments to talk with clients and that kind of thing, but you're in control of that. Unlike many of us for decades, somebody told us when to show up and where to go and what to do, and that kind of thing. And yes, it does depend on becoming confident. I would say the one thing I would say about becoming confident is that the more jobs you do in the system, the more confident you get. And that's another reason that we recommend doing short jobs, because if you're doing $3,000 jobs, you might want to only tackle one of those a month or one every 2 months, because that's, sort of fits your freelancing profile. But if you can do half a dozen jobs in that same month and get half a dozen 4 and 5-star ratings, that does more to make you visible within the system. The system actually promotes you and your profile to people that want skills like yours, and so that's a big advantage for doing that. So that's a good question. And I see some people, they might do one small job a month and feel like that's a lot, and it's a little bit, gosh, do I dare say, like taking a shot? It's like, do you want them to stick it in fast and inject the liquid, whatever it is, and then pull it out fast, as happened with my recent Pfizer shot? Yeah, that's much preferable than doing that slowly. And so there is a value to building momentum. And like Christopher is a chiropractor, and he said after his first 500 patients, he became pretty confident to know how to doctor. And after I would say your first 10 to 20 freelance clients, you become very confident in knowing what to do, because obviously it's a much more complicated equation when you're treating people come in with vague symptoms they may not understand, and you're trying to take your knowledge and map it onto what they're talking about. This is a whole lot easier. You've been doing these kind of things for decades. You've been proofreading. You've been having conversations with clients. You've been doing PowerPoint presentations for decades. And so this is not stuff that is new to you. If you count the number of times you did a PowerPoint presentation, or you made a call to a client, or you worked internally within a company, maybe you were in the area of accounts payable, or buying raw materials, or whatever it is, you've been doing that for decades. And once you connect with that thought, you are, you're ahead of the game. You're ahead of where most people are on this. Most people are sort of sitting at the pot of, gee, can I really do this? I don't think I can do this. What if I could do this, but I'm too old. I can't do this. And, they spin down. And there's lots of people seeing amazing results of getting hooked up on freelancing. And Christopher's got to take off here, but good to see you. All righty. Very good. We'll see you next time. So any other questions before we sign off? Happy to answer those. Please share, like, or love this, and it will spread the message to more baby boomers. Get more baby boomers that are helping themselves be more productive in the world, be more relevant in the world. I talked to somebody recently that said since they retired, they just feel like they're irrelevant. They had a very powerful title in a very large company, and they said, it was a big comeuppance to experience that whole retirement thing, and they thought they would go into freelancing and be commanding the same respect and working at the same level. And of course you don't, because the people that knew you for the last 10 years or 20 years and saw you get all those promotions are not the same people for the most part that are buying freelance services. So you have to a degree, rebuild your reputation in these networks. But the good news is you can do what may have taken you 20 years to do in terms of reputation building in your first 6 months in these online systems, because there's nothing so powerful. John, good to see you. Stop by next week. Thanks for that. Very good. All righty. And so we're going to bring our broadcast to a close today. If you feel so inclined, or if you're watching this on the replay, please leave a comment. We'd love to answer those and follow those during the week. And also share, like, or love, and we'll get this message out to a broader number of people. So thanks for stopping by. We'll look forward to seeing you next week or on our Tuesday night call. Take care.